Good morning. Welcome to the Good Life Meditation for today. This is my daily activity of reminding myself of my 6 objectives and 20 principles. Let's get started. Well, I don't want to be behind that rock truck. They drop rocks, crack my windshield, crack my skull. Let's move up fast. So first objective is to be always ready to die, to have my home, my relationships, and my artistry. The stuff I like to do creatively, all in good shape, so if I check out today, I leave a good clean house. I think I'm in pretty good shape, working on some money stuff, namely my insurance, but that's underway. I gotta go fast. I don't have much time. I got a late start. I'm doing this new thing called this Bible study thing that I'm doing beforehand, which I've got a cutoff point back there, and I went past the cutoff point. Number 2, the good and effective use of time, to make good use of my moments, to not waste them or just pass them in excess leisure or just for the sake of passing time. That term passing time should be anathema to me. I should be making good use of time, and that includes allocations of leisure, but not to excess. There's no room in my life to watch reruns, for example, unless it's a really, really compelling, really good rerun, very funny, very well written, or very informative. 3, the development and maintenance of good, sound life principles. That's exactly what I'm doing right now, and I have done in the past in developing these 6 and 20, and then we're going over them every day in my mind to make sure that they're sound. Next is cultivation of good emotional reactions, just reacting well to the circumstances of the day, not flying off the handle, recognizing what is and what is not within the scope of my control. And if I really do recognize what's outside of my scope of control, I'm not going to be very upset when things go awry. I can thank the Stoics for that. Next is the performance of good action, just doing good things throughout the day. And then next one after that is the recognition of true limits and true opportunities, recognizing what I am able to do and what I'm not able to do. So that what I'm not able to do in the reverse order, what I'm not able to do and what I am able to do. For example, I am not able to remember very well the things that I read in the Bible. I read a whole chapter and then I talk about it here on the camera. But I am able to write them down on a sticky note, the points, and place them right here on the windscreen to read as I'm going along. So I've a recognition of limit and a recognition of an opportunity to overcome that limit. Let's now get on to my 20 principles. The first is the principle of war, to go after everything that I hold true, to attack it, to try to take it apart, to find its weaknesses. Nothing would please me more than to end the day, naked, alone, and shivering in a universe void of certainty. It's all doubt. Wow, what a worthy thing to get myself to that position, because there's a lot more ignorance in the universe than certainty, and I would love to surround myself with that. But I imagine there's some things that are so certain that you'd at least have those. So maybe I can never get it down to 0, but I'd get it down to very small. Now it's down to about 6 and 20. Next is reason is number 2, and the sub-principles of honesty and objectivity. Reason is the instrument that I use in the war against everything that I hold to be true, and everything that you hold to be true too as well. I'm an equal opportunity skeptic. So I use reason, which is to look at the world objectively and to honestly assess the results in formulating opinions that reflect the way things really are, and disqualify and dismiss things that don't fit, that don't make sense, that seem to be held up by virtue of want or superstition or fear, and only hold up things that can stand on their own 2 feet. Next, the homunculus, the little man that lives inside my head. If you're a woman, that would be a little woman that lives inside your head and runs the show. My reminder is that there appears to be no soul, that the homunculus dies with us. When I wink out, my life winks out, so too the homunculus, and I will never be back again. It's something to keep in mind later when we talk about complete oblivion. Next, the home of good and evil, number 4. Good and evil are owned by the homunculus, or the opinions of the homunculus and the perspective. This explains why we can come up with different views of good and evil among humanity. The problem is when we ascribe them to something more than ourselves, we then have no room for argumentation, and then we come to blows. But if we recognize that good and evil are our opinions and our subjective view of the world, maybe objective, but largely subjective, then we'll open our arms to debate and discussion, and maybe reconcile our differences and come up with an agreed upon idea of justice and injustice and the consequence of these. Next is purpose. Whoa, slow down, dude. Came right up next to me. Purpose, biology and virtue. Biology, of course, is a natural science, but I'm referring to the processes by which, the mandate within us to procreate, to raise our children, and to see them on successfully. That seems to be the one absolute mandate that comes from nature for us biological things, us living things. Other than that, there really doesn't seem to be any particular mandate, any purpose. So I developed my own. And my purpose is to be a good and virtuous man, where virtue is defined as the pursuit and furtherance of well-being, making the world a better place for life. Next, atomic principle, number 6. Everything is made of bits and pieces, flowing and changing, forever transforming. And you and I are as well. We're made of molecules and atoms that when we die, even before we die, we start to fall to pieces and will be reused and either become energy or new material for new life that's coming down the pipe. It's all recycled in some ways. Unless it's not, and it just becomes, disorderly energy. So next is principle of nature. Everything in the universe has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that nature is so that we can live in accord with it. I try to pick something out sometimes that has and understand its nature. It's the nature of my pinky finger to be on the far external edge of my hands, and to really kind of play a supporting role in much of what my hand does. I don't rely on it for pointing or scratching or picking my nose. I use it to augment the other fingers, and maybe to show my dexterity and my sophistication when I'm drinking tea from fine china. I try to remember the nature of my coworkers and my work and my job and the things that I'm doing so that I can keep in accord with those. Really does help. I had a good meeting yesterday with a very important person within our organization, and beforehand I reminded myself as I was sitting outside of his office, like a schoolboy at the principal's office, but I was going there for good reasons. As I sat there, I kind of recounted in my mind what his objectives are as a leader and what he's trying to do for the organization and for the county, and tried to ask myself, how can I communicate in such a way as to align with his leadership and the more lofty aims that he's after. And that really helped me. It helped me stay on track when we were talking. Next, principle of maturity and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. Maturity is that state we arrive in where we have understanding of how the world works by virtue of trial and error, and we also have the strength of will to see our better ends through. It's a powerful combination when you can have that. Not a lot of people have that. I'm really working on that myself. I strive towards it every day. Some people are really good. That's a superhero when you can do that. Superpower. A couple of things are superpower. Temperance, apathy, things like that are also superpowers, so to speak. Not literally, just in terms of awe. Next, social principle. We're social animals. We need one another to survive, and it's really worthwhile to find social ends. Strange thing to say from a guy that wrote a book called Going Alone, but really, Going Alone was just a revelation of the great indifference, and then the response to that, which is primary to be a social human being, to look after my social the well-being of the many, and that includes the many of other species. Next, the Feast of Offal. It's all that waste that comes off of our living. We get angry, frustrated, we spill it all out, and we show it in our body language and in making people unhappy in our email, by saying mean things. You know how all that works. The funny thing is the way that we give that out and we consume it from others, and then we let it get us. We dwell on it. Why did that person say that thing in that email? They're a son of a gun, and then you share that with others, and they consume it, and it soils their day, and on they go. It's a strange thing. It's a feast. It's a banquet of unprincipled, undisciplined living. And I try to refrain from that particular banquet and not contribute to it nor feast upon the product of myself or others. Look at those clouds and that sunrise. Wow, morning has broken. Now, next is temperance and the sub-principles of suffering, simplicity, and apathy. Temperance is our controlled consumption of all things: food, drink, work, play, sex, everything, anything. It's a wonderful thing to exercise our self-control and discipline, to not overconsume. And the sub-principles of suffering is relevant because we suffer when we deny ourselves what we want. So it's good to be able to tolerate that. Simplicity is a sub-principle because a simple life is, by definition, a temperate life. We're tempering our consumption by the choice of the way that we live. Living in a small house, consuming less, asking little of the world. And apathy, which is sometimes regarded as a bad thing, like we don't care, and that is a bad. If I see someone suffering in the world and I ignore them, I'm being apathetic toward that. I wouldn't call that a virtue, but I would call a virtue when I can recognize something that's happening that's outside of my control. Like if I get into work today and there's a pink slip on my desk that's outside of my control, I could rail and fume and get all upset, and we would consider that a natural response. But it really is something outside of my control. Much better would be to prepare myself instead. And as I arrive to work and think, and I sometimes do this actually after I turn the camera on, I think to myself, is today the day? Today might be the end where I have to find work. And I'm fortunate, I live in the first world. I'll find a way. There are some imperfect safety nets. I'll find my way into another situation. It'll be hard, but if I'm apathetic towards that fact, so that I can not recognize that it's something outside of my control, then I can deal with it better. Next is principle of the agency and the great indifference. We're all living things. All living things are agents. Subtract out all the life, the surface of Mars, and you're left with the great indifference, which is basically a universe, recognizing a universe without any God. There's nobody back there looking after us or caring for us. We're on our own out there. If I die on the surface of Mars, my body would just lay there, with not regard. My homunculus will wink out. There's no soul apparently that goes off and it does anything, and the universe just doesn't give a damn. The only place I'm going to find anyone to come leave flowers on my grave is if I can be amongst those who love me. So that's agency and the great indifference. Next is, and the good life is not a celebration of the great indifference. It is a recognition of that fact, and then a response, or apparent fact, and then a response to it. And that's what I call the good life. Next, after agency and the great indifference is the best seat in the house, to not want to be anyone else, be anywhere else, or be doing anything else, but to be okay with just where I am, who I am, and what I'm doing, all the while striving to improve. Next is risk, and the risk of avoiding risk. When we're young, our parents tell us, go to school, get a job, find someone to marry, buy life insurance, settle down, and be safe and secure. And you'll hear people all the time admonishing the young to the safe and sane route. And I think that's just fine. The problem is not all of us, but some of us desire something more. We desire something that kind of what the hippies were all about, which is finding ourselves and living a creative, individualistic life in some ways, a life of adventure, of exploration, of experience. That gives a lot of depth and meaning to our lives. If you're not that kind of person, no problem. Then get your degree, get your job, get your spouse, and settle down to a long life of whatever it is that makes you happy. Hopefully you marry someone that's the same way. A lot of people are like that. I kind of envy them in a way. If you're not like that, like I'm definitely not, you want that something deeper, which I consider to be deeper. And some people find deeper in different ways. Maybe religion is their deeper. If you want that other thing, then you better seek after it. And I recommend giving yourself the decade of the 20s to go to school, have adventures, you can make a lot of experiences, find out you're wrong about just about everything, and then settle down in your 30s to marriage and family and all the like. And I think you'll be far more satisfied later in life, and you'll have something interesting and unique to say in your later life when it comes time for your season of philosophy. Almost there to that part. That's the risk of avoiding risk. Next is the Path of Wildness. Oh, I think I skipped that before. That was earlier. Path of Wildness is when we recognize a decision needs to be made and we allocate some time to think about it and gather the facts. And when that time comes, we either make the decision or give ourselves more time. But we can't do that indefinitely. So at some point we have to say, enough's enough. Whether I'm going to use the facts that I've got, I'm going to make a decision, and if I don't have enough facts, I'm going to listen to my gut. And I'm going to recognize that making decisions based on my gut instinct are not the best way to do it. And I might make a mistake, but I'm willing to accept that risk for the virtue of moving forward. So if you can accept that risk and move forward, I think you're going to be in a lot better shape. You're going to also, that's going to give you the opportunity to make a lot of mistakes, and that's, as we all know, is usually the best part of life altogether, surviving the mistakes. As long as they're mistakes, you can survive. That whole thing came about because I would get all those emails from people when I was living in Japan. Oh, I want to come to Japan. I want to live an adventurous life, but I'm afraid. Here, I've got all these things. I can't possibly make it happen. And they never do. Only about 5% of the people that ever contacted me ever do. And I have a feeling that they're setting themselves up for some great disappointment later in life. Because having a great life adventure is a reasonable thing to ask. Next up, I'm going to the sin and damnation. I'm kind of out of order, but I'm getting back on track. There are 5 sins in my worldview: falsity, credulity, faith, superstition, and dogma. I'm taking these in turn. Yesterday I did falsity. Today's credulity. Credulity is a quality, or not a quality. It's a quality in terms of a characteristic of us. We're willing to believe. It's like, oh yeah, that makes me feel good. I'll believe that faith healer that's telling me that he's going to fix my cataracts just by the wave of his hand. Or usually it's not something explicit like that. It's gonna fix my tumor or something like that. Credulity is an overeagerness to believe. I think that's a sin, because that makes us vulnerable. That makes us gullible to hucksters, scams, fakes, and untruths. Next, and the damnation part is being that type of person. You're subject to live your life damned by untruth and defending that. Next is complete oblivion. When we die, it appears there's nothing left over. We don't survive our deaths. There appears to be no soul, no heaven to go to. So when we die, we are completely wiped out. Our homunculus winks out, and therefore there'll be no final reunion with the ones we love. There'll be no final reconciliation with anyone whom we left behind on sour terms, and there will be no final justice for anyone that got away with in life with bad things. Or reward. I should add that. There should be no final justice or reward. Oh yeah, I gotta add that. How did I get this many years into this and not realize that I should add reward there? I'll have to make that change. Now, see, this is why doing this is important, you know? It helps me to weed out potential problems and issues. That was a problem that I didn't have that in there. Next is the season of philosophy. As I mentioned before, I recommend especially the young, to give themselves a full decade of self-indulgence. And by indulgence, I include getting educated. Go as far as you can. Go for a master's degree. Even in today's culture where they say that a degree isn't worthwhile, I think the experience of college is a fascinating experience. It's a place to be broken. It's a place to break down your certitude, to develop critical reasoning skills, and to live in an environment of fascinating people of different cultures, different way of life, different thinking. That's why I really recommend junior college, especially, where you get the great mix of that. But I'm running out of time. Let's continue. So give yourself that great life adventure. You'll be glad you did. I think you'll be a far more interesting person later in life. Lots of interesting stories to tell. Lots of interesting anecdotes to remember and share. And when it comes down to write your memoirs, you're gonna have to do that in volumes, not in a single edition. So next, the season of philosophy. Speaking of writing our memoirs, season of philosophy is when, by virtue of the interesting, dynamic, good life that we've lived, the well-considered life we've lived, every once in a while, it's time to write stuff down. This thing I call the muse, which is nothing more than our creative spirit, speaks to us. And it says, hey, I got something to say. And it really does happen like that, at least for me, and I've heard other people describe the same thing. And when that happens, write it down in that moment. Don't wait. If you hear the little voice inside your head speaking, whatever silliness it may seem at the moment, or frivolous or whatever, don't pull over. Keep a piece of paper handy, or write it on in your text. Write it down, and I recommend really share that with the world. Boy, it's an exercise in developing our courage to do that. It's embarrassing, I know, especially when it's like, what the hell. but it's a worthwhile activity. And maybe keep a separate journals, and a journal for different streams of consciousness. Like I have different journals for the different projects I'm working on, and when I get an inspiration along one of those lines, I hashtag it with whatever that is, and that allows me to then take that bit of writing and segregate it away. These videos are also a part of that, of the season of philosophy, to write things, to share things. So don't be surprised also if your muse changes. So the more adolescent, sophomoric, typically, I should confine that to myself. My stuff in my 20s was definitely striking for its optimism, its innocence, its freshness upon the world. My camera just turned off. The back camera did. It just spoke in my ear, so I was distracted. But I'm glad that I wrote down what I did then, because I can get a glimpse of that world. The 30s was a much more difficult decade, and I didn't write very much in my 30s, and I kind of wish I had. I would love to be able to go back and see that. I imagine it would be a lot darker. The 40s were a time of kind of, Phoenix rising from Arizona type of thing. And then the 50s, of course, now are this it's a kind of a combination, this beautiful optimism that from the 20s, tempered with the discovery of the great indifference, that makes for kind of a bittersweet, melancholy feel. I never realized that until just now, that was the case. It's going alone. The great indifference seems very negative, but it's all leading up to a very positive message in the good life, which is what this is. So go for that season of philosophy. See my new friend? My daughter got a little bell for her car. She and I got that a couple of years back after when we first got the car. We got that at a candy store somewhere. I think it was in Santa Ana. She gave it to me, so I put it on my bike because she got something to replace it. And now arena and utility, the last one. Arena is life is arena for the execution and maintenance of our principles and objectives, which I like to say are like utilities that hang on our belt. They're there for us to use in a moment's notice, as I do every day, up there and elsewhere, with all these things I'm talking about: apathy, temperance, being social, reminding myself that the homunculus is a temporary thing, and to remind myself to write down my words when they come. So I'm going to now cease, and I'm going to get in there and get to work. I have a very good, busy day, productive day ahead of me. Very important to be productive. Very important to do a good job. So I'll take care of everybody. Make it a great day and make it a good life. Take care.